Persona 3 not so portable. The oldest of the Persona games to be released on modern platforms, and what is widely considered to be the beginning of the modern style of Persona games, similarly to Fallout 3 for that series. Just something with the number 3, I guess. Playing through this version released for the PS4 was my introduction to the turn-based RPG series, after being heavily interested in it for a while. And while I believe this version in particular does have some major flaws, it was such an enjoyable experience as a whole that I'm very much looking forward to seeing more from the series. But before I even think about that, let's dive in to what's my longest critique yet: Persona 3 not so portable. This is the third game I've critiqued so far to be originally released in the 2000s. I can just feel myself slowly morphing into a hipster. Okay. So right off the bat, let's address the elephant in the room. The developers of the game, Atlus, made a choice when porting Persona 3 over to the modern platforms. And that choice was to port the portable version of the game, made for the PSP, instead of the FES version of the game, made for the PS2. In retrospect, it's easy to see why they did this, as Persona 3 Portable was the more updated of the two and has features not included in the PS2 version, such as a second campaign featuring a female protagonist. That I'm not going to bring up again, sorry about that. And we now know there was a remake in the works that is a lot more similar to that PS2 version than Portable. However, the remake existing now doesn't change how this game stands on its own, and the version of the game arguably detracts from a lot of the moments that Persona 3 provides, due to the limitations placed on it for its original release on the PSP. Issues we will get to in a moment, but first we need to take a step back and look at the game so we can better understand this point when we get to it. There's a lot to explain, so strap in. Persona 3 is a turn-based RPG, where you take the role of a new transfer student. By day you manage social links, a system where you grow your relationship with the people in the world, and go to school. Woo. By night you also go to school, but it's transformed into this giant tower, Tartarus, that's filled with shadowy creatures known as, well, shadows. Listen, this game is really creative, trust me. Tartarus appearing and fighting these shadows happens at the end of each day in a secret 25th hour that comes after midnight, the Dark Hour, where everyone transforms into coffins, except those who can use the power of Persona. The ability to use this power is seemingly awarded to people at random, though might have some correlation with trauma. The power of Persona allows people to summon these demon creatures based off tarot and other mythological beings, such as Satan. For most people, these are locked to a specific one representative of their inner selves, but you have the power to chop and change at will. At the beginning of the game, you get recruited into a club called Seas, filled with Persona users who are hunting down shadows. These people accompany you to Tartarus as a group of 4 to take on enemies. Each user has different weapons they can use, and their Persona have different type of powers, each with their own strengths and weaknesses, like giant demon Pokemon. Pikachu is my Persona. Similarly, the shadows also have weaknesses you can exploit, and when you hit an enemy with an attack they're weak to, they will get knocked down, losing a turn, while you get to go again immediately. If you knock down every enemy present, you can do an all-out attack, with your entire party swarming and damaging everything. This makes the battles very fast-paced, as after you learn the enemy's weak points, you can target and sweep them with ease. You collect more powerful personas as you progress through Tartarus, being able to fuse them together to create even more powerful ones. This power can be further boosted by improving the social links I mentioned before. Each relationship you have in the day portions of the game is tied to a specific tarot arcana, and improving your relationship powers up your personas of that type. It works as a good incentive to forge these relationships with the people in the world, in theory getting you to connect with these characters and want to protect them from the shadows, but it's hindered by the limitations Persona 3 Portable faced. We will get back to it, just not yet. The game runs on an in-game calendar system, with C's facing stronger shadows once a month, each representing a different major arcana from tarot, with the idea being once all the arcana shadows are gone, life will return back to normal. These fights also serve as major catalysts for the plot, moving things forward through them. But this creates an odd effect in terms of pacing and progression. On the one hand, you can skip as many days as you want by simply going to school, returning home, and sleeping. So in theory, you have plenty of time to breathe between high moments, balancing the storytelling and allowing the player to control it at their own pace, exploring the social links and grinding for levels in Tartarus as they wish. On the other, it also means there's usually a large chunk of each month that's just waiting for the plot to progress with a lot of dead time. Lots of days got skipped because I could do all the grinding I needed to within the first week or so, and everything else was based solely around building social links. Still not yet. RPGs tend to have a large focus on story within them, and Persona 3 is no exception, providing a great exploration of the complex themes of death. It focuses primarily on its inevitability, how we deal with it, and how to make the most of life, and does very little to hide this fact, with one of the first shots, pun intended, of the game being Yukari, holding a gun to her head in the bedroom, wanting to pull the trigger. We'll just leave it with that for now and check in on her in a minute. Minor spoilers ahead. You've just transferred to Gekkoken High School and live in a dorm with a school group known as C's, who are a secret organization hunting down shadows during the Dark Hour. The shadows have been attacking people in the Dark Hour, and those that were attacked have been developing apathy syndrome, basically losing all will to live, with C's fighting them off with their persona powers. Persona are summoned by confronting death, which C's do by shooting themselves in the head with a gun-like object known as an evoker. This is what Yukari was trying to do. Using the evoker is a very common thing you will be doing throughout Persona 3, and it does somehow get less weird seeing anime high schoolers shooting themselves in the head as time goes on. However, it does feel much weirder when characters pull out actual guns to shoot people after seeing these moments. You end up being chased by a shadow with Yukari. She tries to summon her persona but can't, so you step up, pick up the gun, and shoot yourself because you're real smart. Did I mention the main character doesn't know any of this at this point? Then this scene that's much weaker than the cutscene shown in the Fez version plays, which makes me very sad because it is a great moment used to have the player and character confronted by the theme of death as happens when summoning personas. Yes, we can start going into the changes from Fez now. You originally summoned this guy, Orpheus, who then in the Fez version gets ripped apart by this guy, Thanatos, aka Death, and takes his place. It's such an interesting moment for a plethora of reasons, mythological, plot-wise, and most importantly thematically. It's screaming at you in this moment that death, personified here by one of the gods of death, Thanatos, is uncaring and unstoppable, and it's presented in a very engaging way. Not to mention that the cutscene is beautifully animated and dramatically framed, while the models presented in this version kind of suffer from the same lack of being able to take it seriously that Shining Pearl suffered from, although to a lesser extent. It also loses the drama and detail from the scene, with Thanatos just sort of replacing Orpheus now, and nothing more. And the worst thing is, I would have completely missed this scene and all of its intrigue if I didn't find the clip on YouTube, something that continues to be a problem throughout the game. Persona 3 continues to confront you with death in several different ways throughout, with this couple who lost their son and can't move on, this man who is dying of terminal cancer, and other more spoilery things. while breaking it up with light-hearted moments due to their calendar system and social links, drawing you into the world nicely. In theory, missing the cutscenes is not the only difference between Fez and Portable. Another big one is instead of having your main characters model in the overworld and the character models interacting, this is resolved solely for Tartarus, with the overworld instead being presented like a visual novel, with menus to move between areas. Aside from the frames they use to present the characters really lacking in terms of personality and the presentation suffering, the big loss from this is it makes it feel a lot more impersonal and puzzle-like. The visual novel style often works for me. I absolutely adore the Danganronpa and Ace Attorney series, but those games not only have, in my opinion, better art styles and more emotive frames, but lean into the puzzle element, giving you something to solve. In Persona 3, the social links fall into that something to solve box, which detracts from their purpose massively. Instead of connecting me more with the world, I was detaching from it to figure out how to make the most of the daytime I was given and max out as many social links as possible, to be as strong as I could. I was rarely checking in with people because I cared to see what was going on with them, with the exceptions of Yukari, Yuko, this little girl, and this lovable dickhead. But instead, just doing it to tick a box. And unfortunately, the removal of the character models meant that scenes that previously had staging now lost the meaning the framing it provided gave, which became extremely important in the final scene of the game. Major spoilers ahead, but TLDR, it was a no good, very bad change that they definitely should have addressed in this port to make it as good as possible. Everyone ready for spoilers? The main character dies. He dies, and worse, in my playthrough, I didn't even notice. I'm not kidding. At the end of the game, there's a dramatic scene where you are fighting to save the world, and you do an attack that uses up your whole health bar, sacrificing yourself to save the world. In this moment, I thought he was going to die. You don't die then, however. You stick around for a bit, holding on with sheer will to say goodbye to your friends on a day you promised you would meet up. Everyone has been forgetting everything that happened over the course of the game since that final battle, and you were tired, just all the time, in the most accurate part of the high school experience that this game captured. I figured it must have just taken a lot of energy out of your character, and he was holding on by a thread, or had developed the apathy syndrome that keeps coming up throughout the game, with the loss feeling more like the loss of your friends with the memory's disappearance than the loss of his life, because he was still here, so clearly he's not dead. Then at the end of the game, you're with Aigis on the school's rooftop, the only one who remembers you, and she gives a beautiful dramatic speech about staying by your side always, and learning the meaning of life is to live for your friends, saying we can rest now, and that she'll protect us. Your friends run up the stairs, suddenly remembering you, and the game ends. A nice moment. Looking back, yeah, I probably could have picked up that he died, but keep in mind, this game is presented from his point of view. We could still see all this going on, and it was all presented in a visual novel format, so all you can see are these still images of people's faces talking. This is what the scene looked like in Fez. The way he's laying, the weak way he raises his hand to Aigis' face, this makes the message of the scene a hell of a lot clearer, and adds much more meaning to the words Aigis is saying. It also shows your character's condition a whole lot more clearly than tired. After I finished the game, I thought, how odd. After seeing this ending on YouTube, tears were spilled. It's a beautiful ending that this version just does not do justice to. I didn't play Fez. and I probably never will. And I imagine it's the same for many others in my situation, growing up with the PS4 generation and newer. My only hope is the remake took these issues inherited from the portable version for this not so portable one and returned them to the state I saw in these moments, because it made my experience with this game, and especially its story, so much more impactful. How this game explores and confronts death dragged me in. It wasn't afraid of it, and it uses the small and big moments alike to ensure it's constantly on the player's mind, but does so without making it a miserable game. It doesn't pull its punches, but explores the beauty and love for life the topic can bring, and the ending wraps a beautiful bow on the story they were telling. If only I could wrap up as neatly. Thanks for watching the video. If you liked it, do the things with the stuff, like the share subscribe button for more critiques by Candlelight. Next up is Undecided. I kinda want to do Spider-Man Miles Morales, but I wouldn't be doing Spider-Man 1 anytime soon because I've played that a few too many times, to be honest. So, yeah. I could do Cursed to Golf. I've got a few other games in my back pocket that I could pull out. But we'll see. Duskin, signing off.